Not a scandal. Not a scandal. Not a.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Holman. Mr. Holman, can you take a few questions?
Hi, Mr. Holman. Starting with what had happened this morning in New York City, can you tell us more about the identity of the anti-ICE rider and then anything you know about the manifesto?
No, I just got apprised of that before I walked out here, so I don't want to get ahead of the FBI. I don't know what changed since I walked out here, so it's too early. I'm not going to comment on it.
Sir,
Other than this is just another example of someone, attacking ICE because of the constant mismessaging and vilification of the men and women of ICE.
Sir, will there be investigations into ICE agents who either kill people that they are pursuing or are involved in some kind of violent altercation?
Of course there will be.
The New York Times is reporting that the FBI was told over the weekend that they will no longer investigate confrontations with immigration agents.
Well, let's be clear. What we mean by confrontations, it's always been history that, for instance, what happened in Minneapolis and Chicago and Newark, prosecution of 111 cases, which are assault on law enforcement officers, is usually handled by HSI, criminal investigations. The FBI does get involved with them, but they're not leading. But when it comes to shootings, the FBI is always taking the lead. So I think that messaging is a little confusing. The FBI is still going to continue to lead shooting investigations. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not aware of any change in policy, and I think the FBI and DHS actually pushed back on that story.
Mr. Holman, when it comes to body cameras, you're a fan of body cameras now, correct?
Yes, I've always been a fan of
Why
body
did the
cameras.
administration, there was an executive order the president put forward when he came into office to rescind the Biden executive order that was mandating body cameras. Why the change now? Why is the administration...
Look, I'm a supporter of body cameras. I know that body cameras exonerate officers almost 90% of the time. I want the American people to see what that ICE agent sees. You can have cell phone cameras from across the street or cameras from the side or city cameras. I want the American people to see what that ICE officer sees when he takes action. And I think it's going to help ICE with the false media that's out there about him.
But then why did the administration roll back what the Biden administration was trying to do to get body cameras in on?
That's a question above me. I'm just saying, when I came back and, then when Democrats shut the government down, I was a part of that negotiation team up on the Hill. And they kept going to Minnesota. All the mistakes they say happened in Minnesota. I don't think there's a lot of the mistakes they claim in Minnesota. A lot of them were, I don't think, mistakes. But one thing they asked was, we want body cameras. I said, well, there's money, $120 million in the bill you're holding up for me to buy the body cameras. So the reason there's not body cameras nationwide right now because they shut the government down. And anybody doesn't believe that, look it up. Now that we have the funding, body cameras have been purchased. As of last week, they were training the trainers. Body cameras are being deployed throughout the country, training the trainers so they can go to a Boston field office and train everybody. Here's how you use it. Here's how long you need to keep the tape. And it just wasn't the funding for the cameras either. We had to hire a lot of people to handle the FOIAs, because I'm sure all you going FOIA cameras every day, right? So we got to hire people to handle the FOIAs. We got in the storage capability of holding millions and millions of video. That's expensive, but now we got the money that's being implemented.
You just said that in Minnesota, what happened wasn't a mistake with the shootings that we saw.
I said Democrats claim all these mistakes were made. And when I sat down with them, they said, well, they want a mask off. No, we're not taking masks off.
You're saying it's not a mistake. Do you have an update on the investigation that the American people don't know
Look,
about?
I went to Minnesota and I said from day one, it was not a perfect operation. There were several chains of command. I had a problem with the targeting. I went out there and made changes. I brought in additional internal affairs agents in. We created one chain of command. And I see a lot of people out there saying that, we surrendered Minnesota. No, we didn't. We got agreements that keeps that city safer, keeps the officers safer, and keeps the aliens safer too. Because the more aliens we can arrest in the safety and security of the jail means less criminal aliens being released to the street. So we were able to go up there and continue the operation, but we had unprecedented agreements where less criminal aliens are hitting the street, which is good for that state, good for that city, and safer for our officers. That's a win across the board.
Mr. Homan, on the ICE officer in Maine, is there any more clarity on how he got his job, considering the vetting concerns that his wife has raised? Are there potential changes coming to the vetting process of ICE agents?
That's a question for ICE. That's under investigation. I'm sure that part now is part of the investigation. We'll let the investigation play out. I'm not going to comment on the investigation. This is ongoing.
The New York Times found a review that 550
Mark Wayne
people
Mullen
served.
as the DHS secretary. What would you describe as the difference between his management style and the management style of his predecessor?
And let me say this. Someone shared an X post this morning. There are people out there who want to attack this current administration. They don't think we're doing enough. There's an X post this morning that someone shared with me. Someone named Marianne or somebody. The ICE was arresting 3,000 aliens a day last year. No, not once. Not a single time did we arrest 3,000 aliens. And now they're saying we're arresting 2,000. We're hitting about 2,000 pretty steadily. Like I said this weekend, I looked at the data. Arrests are up about 40% over the same time period that we've been funded. Now, I've been frank from the beginning. Numbers were down for a few months because the department was shut down. Of course, numbers are going to go down when targeting less and officers, less overtime and all those other reasons. When you shut, the government down, there's going to be less do. So, and I was very honest from day one. The numbers were down 12 to 16%, but now the numbers are trailing up 40% because we are fully funded. ICE out there doing their job. But I'm really tired of the false narratives going out there about what this administration is doing. The numbers are up. Last month, June, highest numbers of arrests in the history of the agency.
How many?
Then I see people say, wow, you're combining CBP numbers or Coast Guard. No, I didn't. The numbers I quoted this weekend were ICE numbers. So I wish people would do a little bit of research before they start attacking this administration, what we're doing right now. Our numbers are higher than ever been. And I'm sick and tired of people saying we're not doing enough. That's an insult to every ICE agent that's strapping up every day, working 6 and 7 days a week to get this done. It's an insult. These men and women are acting professionally. They're out there making record numbers, and people want to question numbers. I guess that's their right. But let's compare facts.
I just have a question about the difference in the management style of those.
Me and Mark Wayne want to get along well, and he cares about the mission. We serve different roles. ICE and CBP reports to Mark Wayne Mullen. I'm here. I help Stephen Miller. We develop strategies that send down to the programs for implementation. So we got different roles. But I think Mark Wayne Mullen's doing a good job.
Should the FBI investigate these ICE agents if they confront people? That is what the New York Times is saying. That's what their reporting is. They have something that 550 people had charges brought against them for assaulting federal officers. Of the more than 400 cases that were resolved, nearly half had unraveled.
You know what's going to help though? The body cameras. They didn't have body cameras. A lot of these confrontations happen. Again, I think body cameras are going to help. Look, I'm not going to comment on these investigations.
So that's the answer, not FBI investigating it, is what you're saying?
As far as I know, there's been no change in policy. The FBI and DHS just responded to that story and didn't agree with it. Again, I'm not in loop on that. I can just tell you from my experience, FBI has always been involved in shooting investigations. HSI, they're the criminal investigation part of ICE. They do the majority investigations in 111, which is assault and impeding an officer.
How are the training procedures changing? You talked about training the trainers. How are those training procedures changing? And
they're not changing. Training the trainers for the cameras. How do you operate the camera? What's the requirements? When do you turn it on? When do you turn it off? How quick do you need to store the data? How long is the data being stored? So there's a lot of work into this, and training the trainers. Once they get fully trained, they go to the field office with the equipment, and they implement and deploy it and tell people, here's how you use it and here's how you control it.
Are there
So what's the timeline then for every immigration agent to have body cameras?
As soon as possible, if that my way.
So you're satisfied with the training right now of ICE agents? Nothing needs to be improved.
And is
There's always room for that's a loaded question. There's always room for improvement. Things change all the time. FBI updates their training, DEA updates their training, every police department updates their training. Because I used to look, you can never be overtrained. I wish there was more training.
I think American people want the answer of when every ICE agent will be wearing a body camera. I know you said as soon as possible, but is there a timeline floating around within?
That's a question for ICE. I know they got a deployment schedule, and I know they got the equipment. That's a question for ICE. I'm not in the weeds that deep.
Is the administration required to turn on their cameras at all times during a traffic stop?
Yeah. Yes.
And what's the consequence if they don't?
More about the quantity of ICE agents over the quality of the agents?
Say that again?
Is this administration more concerned about the number, the quantity of ICE administrations that it deploys over the quality?
I can't speak for everybody in the administration, but quality agents are very important.
So
it should be all you won't give somebody a badge and gun, they need to be the best they can be.
So are there going to be reevaluations then of the hiring?
That's a question for ICE.
Is there any other procedure or protocol on the ground changing? Stops?
There's already, the director of ICE decided that, there needs to be at least one body camera on the scene. And again, I'm a big supporter of the body cameras. And as more body camera gets out there, they all have them.
That's the only change.
But let's be clear, you can attack the men and women at ICE all you want. It comes down to one simple fact. These people fail to comply with law enforcement. Even some of the major chiefs in this country who don't necessarily agree with this administration says you always comply with law enforcement. But the hateful rhetoric that ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. I see these signs that resist. ICE are let's abolish them, they're fascists. When you keep that hateful rhetoric up for a year and a half, there's going to be that percentage of that left population that's going to be emboldened to take action because they're not a real law enforcement agency. I should resist them. All they had to do is simply comply with law enforcement. If you don't like what law enforcement did to you, then go to the courts, sue, call the ACLU, do whatever you want to do. But you should always comply with law enforcement. If they did, they'd be alive today. Now, I'm not going to comment on the investigation itself. We'll wait for it to play out. This is about complying with law enforcement, and a lot of the negative, hateful. And I said this a year ago. If a hateful rhetoric doesn't stop, there will be bloodshed. And unfortunately, I was right. And I'll tell you something else. It's not over yet. Unless they keep attacking and miscommunicating what ICE does every day, calling them Nazis and comparing ICE to the Nazi regime. Are you kidding me? And I'm not saying the whole country's convinced, but there's going to be that population that's just going to embolden to do something stupid. And I'm afraid that we're going to bury an ICE agent. I'm afraid I'm going to hand another folded flag to a spouse or a child of an ICE agent for simply doing his job. And for any member of Congress to keep attacking ICE and calling them fascists and Nazis, I said it 1,000 times. If they're a Nazi for enforcing the law, what's that make them? They wrote the law. We're not making this up. We're enforcing laws they wrote, and that they appropriate us money to enforce. Now, I'll say it once again. If ICE agents act inappropriately or illegal, they'll be held accountable, just like they were held accountable in Minnesota. Everybody, guys, ICE agents are mom and dads too. They don't hang their heart on a hook every day to do this job. And it's just not attacking the ICE agents, it's attacking their spouses and children, and no one knows that better than me. I can't even go get a quart of milk at a grocery store without a security detail. Why? Because I'm enforcing laws in this country. It's pathetic and it's disgusting.
Thanks, Tom.